Have you ever walked away from a place that used to define you? A job, a room, a season of your life, and realized that no one noticed you were quietly saying goodbye? That silence, it stays with you, doesn't it? You smile, you pack, you move on. But inside, a small part of you whispers, "Did any of this matter? Did I?" If you stay with me until the end of this video, you'll see how a single small act, something so simple you could do it today, can turn endings into beginnings and help you leave every place you touch just a little warmer than you found it. So before we begin, take one quiet second. Write this in the comments, not for others to see, but for yourself to remember this moment. I want to leave light behind. Because that's what this story is really about. How even when everything ends, something kind can still begin. I still remember the smell of that office on my last day. The quiet hum of computers, the echo of voices in the hallway, people talking softly, unaware that I was packing my final box. The desk looked the same as it always had, papers, coffee stains, a few worn-out pens, except this time everything felt slower, heavier, final. There was one yellow sticky note on my monitor, blank, waiting. I sat there with a pen in my hand, not sure what to write. I knew that someone new would soon sit in that chair, someone who didn't yet know where the coffee filters were, or which client never answered emails on Fridays. Someone who would feel exactly what I once felt on my first day, lost, hopeful, and just a little scared. So instead of shutting the laptop and walking away, I wrote a few simple lines. Welcome. You'll be fine. When you feel overwhelmed, breathe. Ask for help sooner than you think you should. And if you ever wonder whether you belong, you do. I left that note under the keyboard. It was such a small thing. But as I placed it there, I realized something powerful. I wasn't leaving a message. I was planting a seed. Because that note wasn't really for them. It was for life itself, for continuity, for kindness that keeps walking even after you've left the room. That was the day I discovered something I now call legacy forwards. The art of writing not to the past, but to the future. Letters that travel beyond you. Letters that keep working when you're gone. We spend so much of our lives wishing we could go back. If only I could tell my younger self what I know now. But what if wisdom isn't meant to circle backward? What if it's meant to travel forward, to the next hands, the next hearts, the next chapter? Because real wisdom isn't a monument. It's momentum. A few weeks later, I got an email from the person who took my place. It began with 4 words that stopped me cold. "I found your note." They wrote, "I thought I was the only one who felt this way. Thank you for making the start a little softer." I just sat there for a moment, still, quiet, humbled. For years, I'd chased impact through numbers, deadlines, and grand plans. Yet that small yellow note, scribbled in 5 minutes, had done what entire projects never could. It had turned anxiety into assurance for someone I'd never met. And right there, I understood something I wish I'd learned sooner. We don't have to be there to make a difference. Sometimes the smallest acts, the ones no one sees, echo the loudest. Funny thing, though, that note didn't feel like a goodbye anymore. It felt like a beginning. Because when you write for someone you'll never meet, you stop performing and start caring. You stop trying to sound wise and you start being kind. That's what legacy forwards really is. It's not about leaving a mark. It's about leaving a light. So I made it a ritual. Every few months I'd write a little note forward, not to the person behind me, but to whoever might walk that path next. Sometimes it was at work. Sometimes it was for my family. Sometimes it was for a stranger who might never even know my name. And every time it reminded me, we may not control who finds our words, but we can control what those words carry when they do. That's how legacies are born, not from applause, but from awareness. From moments when we say, "Let me leave this place a little warmer than I found it." At first, it was just a quiet habit, a few words on a card, left behind like a fingerprint of care. But before long, it became part of how I lived. At work, I began leaving little notes tucked into drawers or taped to monitors. One said, "Here's what helps you survive the first month. Keep snacks in the second drawer. Don't schedule calls right after lunch on Tuesdays. And remember, the people here care more than they show." Another time, before heading out for vacation, I left a card that read, "If anything breaks, call Sam. If Sam's gone, reboot. If that fails, take a walk. It helps." Those words weren't instructions. They were an invitation. A reminder that work continues, yes, but people matter more than process. And then, something beautiful happened. Others began doing the same. A new hire found one of my notes, laughed, and added their own under it. A chain of kindness written in Post-its and pen. Soon, desks across the office had small messages taped in corners, each one a bridge across time. But the practice didn't stop at the office. It followed me home. One night, after putting my kids to bed, I found myself writing again, this time to someone who didn't exist yet, the future version of me. I tore a page from an old notebook and wrote, "To the tired parent you'll be someday. Fatigue doesn't mean failure. Rest when you can. Laugh when you can't. Your kids won't remember your exhaustion, only your presence." I folded the note and slipped it into a book. Months later, after a sleepless week, I found it again. Reading it felt like shaking hands with a gentler version of myself, one who had left encouragement right where I'd need it most. That's when I realized legacy isn't built from grand gestures. It's written in small mercies, moments when we decide to care forward instead of moving on. A few months later, I shared the idea with a volunteer group I was mentoring. They were a young, eager team, full of energy but worn thin by trial and error. Every project felt like starting from scratch. So I said, "Let's write a checklist, not for us, but for the ones who'll come after." They looked puzzled at first. Then, one by one, they began to smile. We gathered around a table, opened a blank notebook, and wrote across the top, "What we wish we'd known in the beginning." And beneath it, "Don't plan big events on long weekends. Always test the microphone. Bring snacks, always. Kindness spreads faster than flyers." By the time we finished, everyone looked lighter, almost proud. One volunteer leaned back, grinning. "Feels good, doesn't it? Like we just left breadcrumbs for the next travelers." Exactly. Because that's what legacy forwards really is, leaving a trail of understanding, of small mercies and gentle wisdom for whoever follows. And here's the paradox I love most about it. When you write forward, you end up learning backward. You begin to see your own journey with softer eyes. You recognize the places you stumbled, but without regret. Because you're not judging anymore, you're teaching. You're mentoring the unknown. You can't control the future, but you can leave a light on for it. That's what these letters are. Tiny lanterns glowing behind you on the path. And even if no one ever finds them, the light they cast changes you. Because writing forward shifts your story from "I'm leaving" to "I'm contributing." In a world that moves fast and ends abruptly, this is how we close chapters gently. We don't drop the torch, we pass it. One day, I watched this simple idea transform an entire department. They'd been through constant turnover, people coming and going so often that every new start felt like déjà vu. So someone suggested, what if we start a book forward? Whenever a team member left, they'd add a page, advice, lessons, or just a few lines of encouragement for whoever would take their place next. It wasn't mandatory, it was tradition. Months passed, then years. That notebook grew thick, its pages worn soft from being passed hand to hand. And you know what? It became the most valuable document in the entire office. Not because of the data, but because of the humanity. Inside were stories of first days and last days, tiny victories, hard lessons, quiet gratitude. Notes that said things like, "Don't panic your first week, it gets easier. The printer only jams when you're in a hurry, so laugh when it does. Remember why we started. It was never about the numbers." When new hires arrived, that book was the first thing they read. It wasn't a manual, it was a welcome. And over time, something subtle but powerful happened. The department began to feel like a family. Not because they were perfect, but because they understood that their work was part of a longer story, written together in kindness. You see, when you write for the next person, your ego finally rests, and your empathy wakes up. You stop asking, "How do I look?" and you start asking, "How can I help?" That shift from image to impact is what makes communities thrive. It's the heartbeat of legacy forwards. And the truth is, the world could use a lot more of it. Imagine if every nurse left a note for the next shift. Room 214 likes extra blankets. Room 216 misses her dog. Ask her about him. Or if every teacher wrote a letter for the next year's class. They'll be wonderful. Just give them a week to open up. Or if every parent tucked a page into the family drawer. To whoever finds this someday, this house runs on forgiveness. Can you imagine what kind of world that would be? One stitched together not by perfection, but by care. A world held steady by people who think just one step beyond themselves. You know what's surprising? Writing forward doesn't steal your time. It creates it. Because when you turn your lessons into words for others, your mind stops clinging to them. It lets go. It exhales. I've seen people walk out of an office lighter just from writing a note that said, "Here's what I wish I'd known." You can feel it, that small sigh of completion. Because closure isn't found in walking away, it's found in passing something on. When you practice legacy forwards, your days stop feeling like errands. They start feeling like heritage. Every moment becomes part of something larger than your own to-do list. Let me make it practical. If you want to start this yourself, it doesn't take much. Just 5 quiet minutes at the end of a week.
Grab a piece of paper and write at the top, "To whoever comes after me." Then tell them what you wish someone had told you, what to watch out for, what to remember, what to laugh about when things get hard. You don't need perfect grammar or big words, just honesty. Because real legacy doesn't hide behind polish. It shows its fingerprints. Then leave it somewhere easy to find, a drawer, a shared folder, a notebook titled, "For the Next One." And do it again every few months. You'll start to notice your tone changing, gentler, wiser, kinder. Because every time you write forward, you grow a little backward, with more compassion for the person you used to be. Legacy isn't a statue. It's a rhythm. It's the quiet heartbeat of kindness moving through time. And the beautiful part? You don't have to know who will receive it. Write anyway, because someday, someone will stumble upon your words, maybe long after you've forgotten them, and they'll realize they were never alone. That's the quiet miracle of legacy forwards. It turns endings into beginnings. It says, "I'm not closing this chapter. I'm turning the page for you."
There's a story I'll never forget. An old gardener in our town kept a small, battered notebook, pages yellowed, edges curled. Inside, he'd written notes about every seed he'd ever planted, which soil liked which bulbs, when the frost came, how deep to bury the roots. When he passed away, his neighbors found that notebook tucked inside a drawer in the shed. They used it to replant the entire community garden. Every spring, they still follow his notes, and the flowers bloom on schedule, just like he said they would. They call it Arthur's Guide. That's legacy. Not a statue, not a name carved in marble, but a season that keeps returning because someone cared enough to write it down. Sometimes I think about that when I travel. Every so often, I'll finish a book in a hotel lobby or on a plane and slip a note between the pages. If you're having a hard week, hang in there. The world is kinder than it looks tonight. Maybe no one ever finds it, but maybe someone does. And either way, I sleep better, because I've left a trace of warmth in a world that could always use more of it. That's the secret of legacy forwards. It's not about being remembered. It's about remembering to give. It's not about permanence. It's about presence. When you start thinking this way, you stop rushing. You start noticing. You ask yourself, what would I want the next person to inherit from this moment? And suddenly, you treat it with more care, more patience, more humanity. And in that small shift, something beautiful happens. Your life becomes less about achievement and more about continuation. Less about what you build and more about what you pass on. Because someday, someone will open your notebook or your drawer or your digital folder and find a note. Maybe it'll make them smile. Maybe it'll steady their hand. But one thing's for sure, they'll feel your kindness in it. So tonight, before you turn off the light or close your laptop, take a quiet minute. Grab a scrap of paper. Write at the top, "To whoever comes after me." Then say what you wish someone had said to you. Fold it. Leave it behind. That's how you start a legacy that moves. One that doesn't end with you, but travels through you. Because the truth is,
The only legacy that lasts is written in kindness, folded into envelopes of ordinary days, and passed quietly forward from one open heart to another. Tomorrow may never come, but today is here, waiting for you to leave a little light behind.